This is Jody.
Good to see you all, at least virtually, for our first ever webinar version of the Adult Diploma Working Group. So let's get started. FYI, we will be recording today's session. Make sure, Carla, if you want to start recording now, that would be great. And the recording will be posted in Schoology. At this point, we are going to mute folks until we get to the discussion portion of the day. Okay, hopefully now it won't unmute me. It kept muting me. Okay. Welcome everybody to our working group session for today, our spring session. Jody and I will be facilitating today's discussion, and we actually have a lot to discuss in 90 minutes, and it was a bit of a challenge adapting to a 90-minute format from a more of a full day in-person meeting. So hopefully all of you get a lot out of today's session in a short while. And just so you know, we will be doing this format more frequently now. We will be doing this format typically at least twice per year in lieu of in-person meetings, like we noted before. So our next session will be in the summer, and that will also be a web session. Our agenda for today, we hope to cover some announcements and updates. We will be talking about diploma reviews and portfolio. We also will be talking about portfolio evidence cover sheets, sharing some program news and highlights, and talking about next steps. So just a couple announcements that we would like to share for today. One, I really want to make sure that you download and check the materials for today's session. There are 5 different materials for today's session, which include teacher CEUs for the session today. And so please make sure to check those out. One of those are linked to the Google Slides. Don't worry though, if you cannot access Google Slides, we will be posting a PDF of the slides via Schoology in the Schoology group. About teacher CEUs, so because we're doing a different format for this session, we were only able to offer teacher CEUs for today. We are having some issues or kind of new challenges with the administrative CEUs in having a new person oversee them, and the new person overseeing administrative CEUs is a little stricter, and they say that updates don't count for admin CEUs. And so I think that will challenge us as we look at applying for administrative CEUs here in the future. We also want to make sure that you look at the agenda for today. There is a paper agenda for today in the materials section, and there we have listed all of the upcoming dates. So please check those and make sure you have all of those on your calendar, including for any staff that need to go through Standard Adult Diploma 101. We're doing 2 webinar sessions. It's a 2-part webinar session, Monday and Tuesday next week. We sent an email out about that as well. And those are the original dates, but instead of the 2 full days in person, we're doing 2 2-hour webinars Monday and Tuesday instead. And those are continuations. It's not choose Monday or Tuesday. We do expect you to attend both sessions if you're participating in that Diploma 101 training. We also wanted to let you know that SID, due to your advocacy, SID does now have an adult diploma tab in the student portal, meaning that students can see that information. So that is outstanding. Thank you all for that idea, and I'm hoping that those of you that are sharing your student portal in SID with your students, that is working well. Another exciting development, we have some new diploma programs that will be joining us, and they're getting started next week. We have 4 new programs that are getting started, or programs in 4 different consortia. First, we have Brainerd, that will be a brand new program joining us. We also will have the program formerly known as GAP, Change Inc., through the St. Paul Community Literacy Consortium that will be joining us. In central Minnesota, we have Cambridge Asani, Malacca, Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe, all joining and going through training. That is exciting. And AEOA is expanding their programming to additional sites across their consortium as well. So this is an excellent array of new programs that will be joining us and going through training here soon. Also, just FYI, this was my favorite photo for today's session. I also wanted to make sure that you had a chance to think about or make sure that you knew about updates with some of our other diploma options, such as GED testing. So we do know that remote computer testing will not be available till mid to late May at the earliest. And there is an initial list that will be prioritized. So remote computer testing will be available if you meet one of those prioritized criteria, such as if you only had one test left, if you had a test canceled on you, if you have a job offer pending finishing your GED, or if you are enlisting in the military and need to complete your GED, or if there's some other documented need similar to that, that would meet that prioritized criteria. And the remote computer-based testing is actually not proctored by our local test centers. It's proctored by an organization called OnView through Pearson VUE. So it is slightly different. They did just announce that the cost will be the exact same cost as current or as in-person testing. So that is a good development or helpful development to know. We also are keeping an eye as the situation with COVID-19 develops, whether or not paper testing would be a possibility. It's important to know that under the current GED testing system, paper-based testing is not like the 2002 series. Instead, what you need to do is you need to schedule an individual test or a test with an individual at least 10 days in advance. That allows for that test to be printed and then couriered to your site. And then you would have a couple of days to administer that test, and then you need to courier it back to the facility or to the scoring location so that it can be the scoring book can be collected and scored, and then the score is posted on the GED.com account. All in all, it's a much different, much more individualized, and it's an individualized process. And so, if that becomes an option that seems to be feasible for some reason, we will let you know, or you can let me know. Also, one of the areas where we think this might be helpful is potentially in some correctional settings, but we're staying tuned to this as the COVID-19 situation develops. If you have any ideas or questions about this that you'd like to share, please let me know. And for those of you that are working with GED Testing Centers, you should have received an invite for a meeting on Friday. If you didn't receive an invite and would like to participate in that meeting for GED Test Center staff, please email me and I will send you that invite. Also, some folks have been asking about how could they do some GED Ready Proctoring for age waivers. So there are two ways that many programs have been doing this. One is that you can train an on-site adult like a parent to be the proctor. So you as the AD program or as a GED testing center could train an adult that would be in the room with the tester. After the testing, that program would check in with the proctor to make sure that everything went okay, ask about the testing, and make sure the cheater or the tester didn't cheat. And another way that you could do this is you as an AV program person could do remote proctoring through an online video conferencing such as Zoom or GoToMeeting or something like that, where you would actually watch the tester take the test on the computer, ensuring that that person does not cheat. And this could be either on the same device that the person is taking the test on, or it could be another device in the room, such as a tablet, another laptop, a smartphone, etc. Some things to think about if you're training a proctor or if you're thinking about whether or not you could proctor. A couple things that we expect proctors to be able to do when they're proctoring GED Ready tests. They need to make sure they can watch the tester for the complete testing period. They need to know what is and is not allowed during testing. They need to verify that the tester did not use a device or an unallowed resource during testing. They should check that the student is not recording the test questions or responses, and they need to assure that the tester did not cheat in some other way. So let's keep going with talking about the high C's. So our competition for high school equivalency assessments is underway. We had a little bit of delay with the COVID-19 situation, but that competition materials or the application for test vendors will be posted here soon this spring. And so that is exciting. We also have all but one of our reviewers selected. We're still waiting for someone from our tribal nations to be appointed from the Tribal Nations Education Committee. We also anticipate the results to be announced by July still at this point. So stay tuned. And thank you for those of you that did volunteer to be part of that evaluation. I also want to let you know in terms of other testing that there is the possibility of remote testing for CASA's Best Plus and TABE here in the future. With Best Plus, it is already available for anyone using Best Plus, but we know that's really typically just Metro North. And so that is available with training, and if you have any questions about that, you can contact Linda Keller about how to get that set up. The other situation is with CASAS. So CASAS is making remote e-testing via Zoom available to programs that are already doing computer-based CASAS testing, and that will start sometime here in May. We do know, though, that there aren't a lot of consortia or programs that are doing CASAS testing, so that is that won't help a lot of programs necessarily. And with TABE, it's kind of an interesting situation as well. And I do see that there's a hand up, and no worries, we're going to take questions right after I get through this slide. So with remote TABE testing, we will, that might be available as soon as 1 to 2 months. It will go through online proctoring because it's a computer-based remote testing again. And so that will be easier for any program that already has a DRC Insight account and is already working with that. The one thing that's going to be made available sooner, or that is available sooner, is the locator. The locator should already be available to remotely give your students that have devices to be able to give those students a locator for free. That's available to all programs that already have a DRC Insight account. If those that have a DRC Insight account would be if you're doing e-testing with TABE 1112, or if you're doing paper-based testing and having those scores scanned by and then if you're having the scoring sheets scanned and scored by DRC themselves instead of doing the scoring yourself. That is if you'd have a DRC Insight account as well. Note that DRC will be releasing guidance on how to effectively proctor that test, both the locator and the TABE 1112. So that will be treated differently. So let's go and take some questions at this point. Jody, do you mind helping me with this? It'd be good to have a second set of voices and eyes on the chat.
Sure.
So first, it looks like Andy asked, can consortia using CASA's paper transitions to CASA's computer to make use of this? That's a great question, Andy. And I think that might be available in the future, but initially they're saying that they're going to make remote testing only available to programs that already have been doing e-testing with CASAs. So initially no, but maybe yes, longer term. Are there other questions, Jody, that you've seen in the chat? If you have a question, also you can raise your click to raise your hand, and we can unmute you and call on you.
I think that was the only question asked so far in the chat, Brad.
Sounds good. Any other questions about? I know we talked through a lot of updates at this point. Any other questions about those updates? Okay, great. Don't worry, we have time for questions later on, no problem. Also, a new update that we have is that tomorrow we'll be releasing a memo saying that that we are lifting the 12-hour restriction in SID for new students that do not have a pretest during the school closure period. What will happen is that you will see, and you will have to accept or allow a new test in your assessment assortment in SID called COVID EFL exception and or exemption. And if you allow that, then for any student that is nearing that 12-hour mark, or any of your new students, you can create this that kind of counts as the pretest in the interim, and then it will allow you to enter 12 or more hours for those students. Please note, though, that during this period, at this point in time, we're saying that those students' hours will count for state AB funding and will count towards post-testing, but testing doesn't really count, I guess, if you don't have a pretest. But anyways, it will count for state AB funding, but it might not initially count for federal AB funding and reporting until we get additional guidance from the feds. We're still waiting for clear guidance on the feds on how to handle that. Our office will be sending an email tomorrow through Sherry's email, so stay tuned for that. Any questions on that part? I see Sherry said, asked when testing might be allowed. So we've talked through what remote testing might look like. In terms of in-person testing, I think that it really depends on a couple of, on the governor's executive orders. A couple things that we are looking at are school closures, when currently the governor has said that we're in distance learning mode in school, public schools until the end of this school year, and we're interpreting that till the end of May, typically, at least at this point. And we're also looking at just the stay-at-home orders and when those are lifted and what that might mean as well. So stay tuned. And then, Laurie, you had a question about, will you be able to backdate the intake test to when they began in the program? So a couple things that we're saying about this is that this will count starting May 1st. So you can't add April hours in. We're only allowing May 1st hours and beyond for this time period. And that is to, because those hours are not necessarily counting anyways, and because we just needed we did need a official start date for that. So we are not at this point saying that that would count for April hours, just for hours starting May 1st and beyond. But luckily that will not affect your consortium's funding, because your April hours are not part of the funding for this next fiscal year. You know, one thing I will say about doing these sessions alone in their house is that I can't read your expressions at all, and it's a lot more challenging to talk. Jody, anything else in the chat, or Astrid, anything else?
I don't think there's anything else in the chat, Brad. It is interesting. It's a little test for me and you, because now a couple of times you've answered a question verbally that I answered in the chat, and so far our answers are the same. So that's good.
Well, that's good.
Yep. I do see Andy has added another question. Could we ask for the ability to test in person once some of the restrictions are lifted, even if schools are closed? We can run the testing with social distancing.
So that's a question that at this point we are saying likely no, at least through the month of May. But we are also responding to guidance as it's changing as it evolves from the governor and from the Commissioner of Education. Jody, anything you'd add to that?
Yeah, I agree with Brad. We are, based on the latest executive order from the governor, our guidance to ABE programs is that in-person programming, which includes testing, should be closed through the month of May, at least. So I think at this point, that's what we should consider our new normal for now. As we all know, we're figuring this out as we go along, so it's hard to predict at this point even what will be true on June 1st. So I would say some kind of gradual return back to ABE programming might be possible at some point, but the truth is we just do not know exactly what that looks like, and it definitely won't be in May.
Thanks, Jody.
Yeah.
Again, we will have some guidance for you with some technical details in the memo that we're sending out tomorrow through Sherry's email. Amy Fish notes that her school district is making a good example of why it has to be an order. Administration has found a loophole to justify a live graduation ceremony on May 17th with a few minor modifications. Oh, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Amy, do you mind sharing just a little bit more about that before we move on? I'm curious about that, what that means, and I'd like to hear a few more details about that, just out of curiosity.
Okay, well, the loophole, because obviously they've been told no in-person programming until the end of the school year, and May 17th would be before that. But the loophole is our school district last summer was approved to have an early out because we have big construction projects in almost every building this summer. So technically, our school year was going to end on May 15th anyway. The minor modifications are that they are going to move it to an outdoor ceremony and have fewer guests invited.
Wow. Okay.
Like I said, that this is good evidence of why it has to be in order, because that I don't know how much I should say out loud of what what I'm thinking shouldn't be said out loud. I'm not going to say anymore.
I understand, and I appreciate though that information. Thank you, Amy. Emily Watts is sharing that their district has been clear that buildings will be closed through the end of the K-12 school year, except for emergency childcare. Wow, excellent. I think these types of developments are helpful to know, and just helpful to see how different districts or organizations are interpreting the governor's executive orders. Thank you. I also wanted to let you know that we do have an ABE and COVID-19 update that will be on Thursday, April 30th from 10 in the morning to 11:30. I apologize, but we are full registration. We are not allowed to have or able to have more than 200 people on those webinars with our GoToTraining account. And so that is already full with 200 folks. But we will be recording the webinar and making materials available at mnabe.org. We also want to encourage you, if you are registered for that webinar and you already know that you cannot attend, but you just want to make sure you got the updates, we encourage you to email us to let us know, and then we can unregister you for that webinar. That way we can make sure that all of those that are planning to participate are able to participate. Okay. Well, those are our updates for now. I would like to turn it over to Jody right now to talk about diploma reviews. Jody.
Great, thanks, Brad. Actually, I just wanted to add one other thing. Can you go back just one sec, Brad, to the slide about the webinar tomorrow?
Yep.
Yep, thank you. So as Brad noted, registration is full. We would appreciate it if you know you can't attend and you did register, go ahead and cancel your registration to let somebody else in. If you want to attend and haven't been able to register, go ahead and check again tomorrow in case we've gotten a few folks who have given up their spot. And I just wanted to put a little plug that one of the things that we are hoping to do on the webinar tomorrow is to share some images and screenshots from programs around the state to kind of take a look at what does ABE look like across our statewide system at this moment. So if any of you are willing to share a screenshot or an image, either of your online classroom or any tools that you've been using to communicate with students, or any student work that the student has given you permission to share an image of, that would be really great. We're hoping to, put together some images that really represent the variety of things that are happening across the state. So if anybody has an image to share, you can email those to me and to Brad. Thanks. All
Thanks,
right, Brad,
Jody.
you can
And
go
and
forward.
one
Yep.
other clarification, I just wanted to ask maybe you, or maybe it's more of a question for Astrid. Astrid, I
Yep.
believe that you can't actually you can't actually cancel your registration, right? You have to email us as organizers and we can unregister you.
So I believe that if you go to the confirmation email that you received when you registered, there is a place at the bottom of that email to cancel your registration. So I would encourage people to do that. If you are not successful in doing that, please contact Sherry and we can get that canceled for you.
That is good to know. Okay, good. I learned something new today. Thank you. And before,
Brad,
sorry, Jody, now we've had one other
Yep.
question.
Yes.
So the question is, are there any GED testing centers open at this point in time? And Sherry, I will say that outside of Department of Corrections and maybe a jail or two, but outside of a correctional setting, there are no GED testing centers open yet in the state of Minnesota. I do believe that I'm not sure though about North Dakota and South Dakota testing centers, if they are open or not. But I have heard that they still might be operating. But here in the state of Minnesota, with the governor's stay-at-home executive order, there are no non-corrections GED testing centers currently open. We will have a meeting with GED Testing Service and Minnesota GED Test Center proctors and administrators on Friday to talk through this situation. And Teresa was even noting that in the DOC that they've been doing minimal testing and that most of their facilities are not currently able to test. That's good to know. Thank you, Teresa. Okay, turn it over to you, Jody.
Great. Thanks, Brad. So we want to spend some time talking about reviews. You can go ahead onto the next slide, Brad. The biggest and most important news that we have about reviews is that we have now gotten our new diploma review team up and running. And I know that I speak for both myself and for Brad when we say that we are extremely happy and grateful for this group of people. And having a team dedicated to reviews, I think really allows all of the portfolios from all of your students to get the detailed and and timely review that our students deserve. So it's just really great to have this group of people, and already we've had lots of interesting discussions and questions come up about evidence, and now we have a sort of a bigger set of minds kind of wrapping ourselves around, what does good evidence look like, and what makes a great portfolio. And I'm just really, really excited for the work that this team is already doing. So we wanted to take a few minutes to introduce the team to all of you. I'm going to ask each one of our 5 reviewers from the review team to briefly introduce themselves and tell about their experience with the adult diploma, and really quickly kind of say what their program is currently doing in terms of diploma work, because we know that all looks different in this moment. We've asked them to share or turn on their webcam quick, if that's possible and acceptable, so that you can put a face to a name. But these are all folks who have, been part of our standard adult diploma community for years now. So I am going to turn it over to you guys. Let's start with Amy. Amy, can you introduce yourself to us?
Hi, I'm Amy. I'm from Detroit Lakes. I'm the program manager there. Detroit Lakes has been part of the adult diploma program since the second year of the pilot rounds. We have backed off a little bit in the past year from doing adult diploma because we had all new staff coming on board. But now that the staff are fully into adult basic education in general, we're really embracing adult diploma, and it's taking off again. And we're developing courses and capstone projects that suit the teaching style of the staff we have on board now. And I'm really excited to be part of the review team. I thought it was going to be more tedious, but it's really been fun to see all of the work that's coming in from around the state and to see how everyone else is doing it.
Great. Thank you, Amy. All right. How about Andy?
So, hi, I'm Andy. I am a teacher at the Adult Academic Program of Robbinsdale. We were one of the initial pilot programs for the adult diploma, and we are continuing to work within that system. Again, most of our students are doing high school credit completion or GED preparation, but we do have a few that fit into the adult diploma set and are working through that.
Great. Thank you, Andy. All right. How about Laurie?
Hi there, this is Laurie from St. Cloud. Just like Andy, I was involved since Pilot 1, the first pilot group with Adult Diploma. We currently have about 33 students in our Adult Diploma program. Half of them are English language learners that have worked up through the ESL program and now qualify for ADP. And during this time of COVID-19, we're using a lot of Google Meets time between our teachers and our students, as well as some other platforms as well. And we are doing paper pencil. We're sending packets out to students that just don't have the technology access. So we're kind of doing a smattering of different things right now.
Great. Thanks, Laurie. How about Paula?
I'm going to be brave and try and use my camera so you can see me. Yay! I'm used to it. I do a lot of Google Meets. But anyhow, OSSEO has been part of the adult diploma pilot from the beginning. And we currently we cap our numbers at about 15 at a time. And we're running about 10 right now that are active diploma students. Most of what they're doing, it is electronic. We're doing Google Meets a lot as classes and in individual advising. One of the things that's been a challenge, but has been much more interesting, is the students, if they can't send something electronically, such as a drawing or something, or a math test, we're getting photographs and videos, phone videos saying this is what I did and talking me through them. So that's been kind of interesting. And I'll be sending that through to the reviewers as soon as those students are done.
Great. That sounds great, Paula. So we know you were going to be brave, but I don't, there she is.
There it is.
Hello,
I
Paula.
forgot to click something. Okay, now I'm going to click it off. All right.
Okay,
bye, everybody.
great. Good to see you for a second there, Paula. Thank you. Good to get an update from you. And Vicki.
Hello, everyone. My name is Vicki Lambert, and I am a teacher at the correctional facility at Stillwater. And the DOC has been part of the ADP program since the beginning. I came in on the second year. And what have we been doing? Well, we're doing everything through distance learning by doing paper and pencil. And we prepare assignments every week, and we put them in folders, and we take them to the units. And then we have different inmates who pass them out to the students and collect work. And so we just have been going through that cycle of not seeing our students at all. Neither have we been able to actually communicate with them except in writing. So that's what we're doing.
Great. Thanks, Vicki. Good to see you. Vicki, I think you're one of the few folks in our field that's still reporting to your work building every day. Looks like Andy maybe tried to share his webcam, but didn't. I'm going to give you another share. There's Andy.
So yeah, I hit it on, and I guess I didn't hit the button that said share. So
great.
There
Good.
I am.
You looks like you have a nice green screen set up there.
Yeah, it's so I can like be from outer space and stuff like that, but this platform's not allowing that. So
yeah, sounds good. Thanks, Andy. Great. So that is those are the reviewers on the review team. And then we have a couple of other people involved in the review process that we also wanted to make sure that you know about. Can you go on to the next slide, Brad?
Yep. Before you do that, Jody,
yes.
I also just want to make a quick statement to say that we were overwhelmed and in awe of all of the people that applied to be part of this team. We had almost 20 applicants for these 4 paid positions, and it was a really tough choice. And we are really excited about the team we have. And we also know that there are some other outstanding people that applied as well. And I just wanted to thank all of you that applied and that that were interested in this position. That is really exciting. I'm super excited about this team as well. And just wanted to let you know, if you weren't selected, don't feel bad. Like I said, it was an intense competition. And I will also note that the reason we were able to include 5 instead of the original 4 is the Department of Corrections was actually willing to pay to have a person from their programming or from their consortium participate in this process. So they are paying Vicki out of her salary to do this work. And so that is really outstanding to see. And I just wanted to say thanks to all of you that applied. And I, again, super excited to have this team on board. Thanks, Jody.
Yes, very good point. Thanks, Brad. So a couple other folks who are also supporting this work. Carla from LAN has a role. Carla, do you want to say hi to folks and kind of explain your part of the process?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Carla Vian with Literacy Action Network, and I'm right exactly where I like to be, kind of doing the behind the scenes work. So what I help the team out with is getting the portfolios from SID and out to the review team. We assign a team of reviewers for each diploma to review. And so I'm in charge of making sure that those get out and come back in a timely manner, which has worked out just great. Yeah, so it's been working really well.
Great. Thanks, Carla. We are also very appreciative for having Carla's attention to detail on this process. It's been really great to have somebody else helping to manage those details of coordinating the review process. And then we also have Christine Kelly, who offers some additional help and expertise. Hey, Christine.
That's my Christmas tree. It is. It's a Christmas tree. I still have it up from July or from December. Yeah, I'm kind of I've been with it since the task force. I'm kind of a sounding board sometimes for ideas, but mostly what I'm going to be doing is kind of in case some really complicated ELA evidence comes in, or a pair of reviewers are they're not quite sure they agree with each other or whatever, that I can come in and eyeball it and give some extra information. I don't, seeing who the team is, I don't think I'm going to be needed very often, but I'm here for any of that kind of support.
Great. Yeah, again, it's just really helpful to have your expertise as Christine and another great mind to kind of talk things through as we work through reviews. So, and then as usual, Brad and I are the 2 folks on the MDE team who are supporting the diploma work on that end. So ultimately, both the authority and the responsibility for approving portfolios and awarding diplomas rests with the Department of Education. So if you don't like your review results, please don't get mad at the reviewers. You know, you can take that up with me and Brad. All right, thanks. You can keep going, Brad. So we wanted to take some time to talk through what the review process looks like now that we have a team of reviewers, because it is a little bit different. So we want to be sure all of you, who are in the process of getting portfolios ready and are going to be submitting portfolios, that you know what the review process looks like. So the first step is that you submit the portfolio for review in SID. Once that happens, then Carla will assign 2 reviewers from the review team per portfolio. Obviously, you now all know who the reviewers are, but we won't be letting you know which 2 of the reviewers specifically reviewed your portfolio, so they are anonymous in that sense. The second step is then that the reviewers go ahead and complete their review. They are going to be documenting feedback, and then they're going to recommend one of 3 rating options. They may rate it a pass. They may say that minor changes are needed, or they might recommend that significant changes are needed. Then the third step is that MDE staff review the feedback and recommendations from the reviewers and ultimately make the final determination of the rating given to a portfolio. Then the next step, the fourth step, if everyone agrees that the portfolio is a pass, then MDE staff will mark the portfolio as a pass in SID. That then makes the official diploma and transcript documents available in the student's record in SID. Then we will also email all of the reviewer feedback to the program. And when we do that, we're going to CC the whole diploma review team, which does mean there's quite a few people CC'd on that email. But we decided to do it that way in order to make sure that reviewers remain anonymous. So like I mentioned, you won't know which 2 of the reviewers reviewed specifically your portfolio, and that's why we will CC all of them every time. Then on the next slide, there's a couple more steps that could happen if the portfolio does not pass on the first time around. So the 5th step would be the portfolio might need an addition or a change, 1 or more changes before it can be rated a pass. In this case, we will mark it as a not pass in SID, and we'll request additions or changes via email. Again, we're going to CC the whole team. And then once you have had a chance to review that and add any additional evidence or make any changes, then you would go ahead and resubmit the portfolio in SID, and then we'd take a look at it again and give a final rating. So that is what the review process looks like at this point. So far, it's been working pretty smoothly. I don't see any questions, but I'll pause for just a second. Any questions or comments about the review process? All right, good. So hopefully that's pretty straightforward for everyone. Can you go on to the next slide, Brad? So we wanted to let you know kind of where we're at with reviews. Those of you who've been around for a while might recognize that having only 3 students currently in the queue means that reviews are happening in a much more timely manner than they have in the past. So that's really good news. Yep, we do have several underway. We have a few students who have been resubmitted. We do have some portfolios that are kind of out there that were reviewed once, were not rated a pass, and we're still waiting for the program to make those additions or changes. So we do have some others that are sort of pending, but not too many waiting for review at this point, so that's great. And we have just under 800 standard adult diploma graduates across the state since the inception of this project. So that feels like a really significant number, and kudos to all of you and all of us, you know, for this work that we've been doing. Great. And then as we're talking about reviews, we did want to mention a few things that we've noticed, particularly as, you know, the new review team has gotten up and running. We kind of put our heads together to think about what are some of the main things we're seeing that we want folks in the working group to be aware of. So this is our short list. And I think Brad and I will take a minute to talk through some of these. So first issue or tip for you is please make sure that you clearly correct student work and mark which items are correct or incorrect. We've sometimes had the experience when looking at a portfolio of, is that marked wrong? Is it marked correct? And it can be time consuming if you as a reviewer have to actually work the problem yourself. I'm thinking about math right now. So please really make it obvious to us as reviewers what the student got right, what the student didn't get right, and if there were any, you know, corrections after the fact.
Excellent. This is Brad, and I'll talk about number 2. We also want to make sure that with your new students that are completing their writing work now, or their student writing now, please use those writing checklists that we've developed and shared over the last couple working groups. They are posted in Schoology, so please make sure you're using those writing checklists and looking back and referring to those. And attach the appropriate writing checklist, whether it's whether it's an argument essay or whether it's another form of writing. Please make sure to include that checklist and attach it with the portfolio.
Great. And then our third tip is about group work. So sometimes we see as student-produced evidence something that was completed as part of a group, which is definitely, you know, an acceptable option. However, it is really important as a reviewer to be able to see what the individual student's contribution to that was. So if you are submitting group work as the student-produced evidence, just make really sure that the reviewers understand what the individual student's piece of that was, what their contribution was, you know, which parts of it specifically show mastery on the part of that individual student.
Excellent. And then number 4, I feel like this is a piece of advice we're giving quite frequently, or it's not the first time you have heard this, but please make sure that you're checking the competency completion options document and reading those options closely as you're submitting student work under the various options. We have had situations where someone submits something under a specific option, but they're not meeting that entire definition or what is said in that completion options document. So please make sure you're referencing that frequently.
Great. And our last issue or tip has to do specifically with reading. And so please remember that when you're using ABE instruction as the completion option for reading, you need to conduct and share a quantitative analysis of the text the student read, and possibly also qualitative analysis. And that needs to show that the text is high school level. And we are going to talk some more about that. So I'll turn it over to Brad and Christine for that.
Excellent, thank you. Christine, are you unmuted?
I am now.
Perfect. Okay, Christine, let's get started on quantitative and qualitative analysis and reading. And specifically, I just want to point out that we're talking about this when you're using adult education instruction as the completion option.
Yes, and this has been something that's been on my mind and probably other minds for a while, and it kind of took center stage last week when an adult diploma program sent me a diploma task based on 2 short stories in literature, and wanting to tweak it a little bit and wanting to use it as evidence. It's been used as evidence before, and continuing, and the question came up about literature. So Brad, do you want to tick to the next slide?
Yep.
So when we talk about the quantitative analysis tool and what the scores mean, in the Blue Book, in Reading Anchor 10, that's the text complexity band anchor. And when we say the text must fall in the level E range of ATOS or Lexile, those are the 2 that most people use in Minnesota and elsewhere. It needs to fall within these specific numbers. And that's for a level E text, which isn't very difficult to get into with nonfiction. Fiction is a different story. Brad, did you want to say anything about the ATOS scores?
Yeah, I just also wanted to point out I've made this mistake myself, so I don't blame people for making this mistake. But I think of with the ATOS scores, I think, oh, if it says 9.0, that must mean it's the 9th grade level. Or if Lexile is in the 900s, that must mean I started equating those to grade equivalents, and that is not how neither the Lexile framework works or ATOS. So make sure that you're referencing this grid, which is in the CCRS Blue Book. Under Reading Anchor Standard 10. Make sure you're referencing this chart as you look at that. And Christine has put this in our Schoology group, this resource in the Schoology group as well.
Thanks, Brad. So in ABE instruction, the student needs to demonstrate competency in all level D standards and at least 1 level E standard. So the question is, can we use fiction to submit for reading portfolio evidence? Prior to this, the competency completion options have said that the text must quantitatively measure at the level E band. The issue with literature is literature doesn't measure that way. That is the quantitative limitation that's been talked about since the Common Core, that only part of the text difficulty is really determined, which is why we also do a qualitative analysis. And some things, if you compare the rubric for informational text, the qualitative rubric, and the qualitative rubric for literary text, they differ in these 3 ways. With literature, there are often a lot of themes, and many times a particular theme or themes require the entire reading of the text in order to get the theme. Organization is measured a little bit differently because often there are multiple storylines, there are time shifts, particularly flashbacks, characters are very complex, and there might be a shifting point of view within the story. And finally, the knowledge demands are different, and this is because there can be complex themes, and the portrayal of characters' experiences may be unfamiliar to readers. So when we add this to the fact that quantitative algorithms measure sentence length as part of the formula, if you have a short story, a novel, something that has a great deal of dialogue, it's going to end up with a lower quantitative score, regardless of the difficulty of the text. So we look at books like Grapes of Wrath and 1984 and Crime and Punishment and Jane Eyre. None of these fall into a level B quantitative band, but certainly they are more than complex enough for high school level reading and work. Anything to add to that, Brad?
Nope, I think you hit it well.
Okay, so can we use literature? Yes, we absolutely can. Can we use it if it quantitatively measures in a level C or D band? Yes, but there must be a qualitative analysis. So we need to talk again about the rubrics. But what some programs are doing is they are just developing just a short paragraph description of the main complexities of that specific text that they're submitting. And I'm going to put some examples of that up in the diploma group on Schoology. The reading tasks that have to accompany the literature need to address the complexity identified. So if one of the complexities identified is there are multiple themes that the writer is developing, then students need to be unpacking that as part of the tasks before they do something in a summative writing assessment about themes. And also, Brad and I have talked about this, and Brad in particular has stated that he wants to see more than multiple choice questions. He does want to see some short answer questions. Now, I asked Paula to send me an example because she has used literature before, and an example from her is she had a set of multiple choice questions that students would answer about the short story. Then she had additional analysis questions that were short answer before students moved to a writing prompt. The writing prompt or other summative assessment has to be aligned with at least one level E reading anchor. And we're going to show you a couple examples of that. Next, Brad.
Yep.
So these are just a couple examples of kicking it up a notch. Now, level C questions. Yes, Paula says the submission evidence was only the writing, was the writing prompt, and the writing prompt was a level E writing prompt. But some examples, we certainly can ask level C questions of students in text-dependent question sets. We want to make sure that students get the gist and that they have an understanding of some of the language and the big details of the story. So a question that's a level C would be, what does the phrase blank mean in the text? You can kick it up a notch by asking, how does paragraph 10, this is just a made up question, contradict the tone of the story set initially by the writer? So this pulls the analysis up. Another example is, what event begins and ends the story? This is from A Rose for Emily, which is a very popular short story. And of course, it is important that students recognize that the story begins and ends with a person's death, but kicking it up to level E, how does the way, sorry for the typo, how does the way the writer organizes the timeline of the story contribute to an overall feeling of suspense? So now students have to recognize that the beginning and the end event are the same, but within the story, there's a lot of flashback in order to develop kind of a punch at the end where we understand more the tragedy at the end. All right, next. Okay, oops, sorry. So here are some examples, and I did take Paula's first example, and here's an example. A lot of the times when you jump into level E, I noticed that a lot of level E questions deal with theme and the development of theme or the development of characters across a text, including evidence, dialogue, details, things like that. So I'm not going to read through all of these, but what I put in red is language that knocks it up to that level E. So exploring a theme and how the characters actually define the idea of heritage and including evidence, that's an example. Another example for a story like everyday use is, how did the characters change and how does the change in characters develop the theme of legacy? So you're actually giving the student a theme, but they have to really dig in and discuss the transformation. The third one is comparing and contrasting the two characters, not just compare and contrast, do a Venn diagram. That would be a level C, but comparing and contrasting them and their motivations, personalities, and points of view with respect to the theme, now we're getting into level E. These can look very difficult for a lot of our students, which is why we don't give them these immediately. We give them other tasks. And Paula said that what she would submit was the writing, not the multiple choice tasks, but she had those tasks built in to help students develop a deeper understanding of the story. Next slide. So even though we want high school level work or some examples of level E competencies, it does not mean we cannot support the students in any number of ways. We can create specific sets of questions that target the complex issues, or that if you want students to write about theme or character, then questions and tasks before that should help students determine the themes or determine characterization. You can include a task that specifically requires students to analyze dialogue or make inferences. So for example, I'm looking right now at a comparison of the stories Thank You, Ma'am and A Day's Wait by Hemingway. And there's some interesting, and Thank You, Ma'am, there's some interesting dialogue and dialect, and having students work with that, or having them make inferences where you're giving them details from the story or quotes from the story and having them work with inferences. You can provide graphic organizers so that students can collect evidence, so that they can fill in the details that they will eventually be writing with. You can give students sentence starters for including evidence, how to, more smoothly complete evidence according to the author, blah, or a bank of transitional words, phrases that are appropriate to the summative task. These don't make things easier, they support students in doing the work that we want them to do. So we're not holding their hands, but we are giving them pieces. And even in a college writing class, your textbook is going to include a chart of useful transitional words and phrases. So, so keep in mind the different ways that we can support students. Last slide, Brad. So Common Lit, for those of you who like Common Lit or haven't gotten into it yet, it really is a good source of literature. And Common Lit does an excellent job with their sets of text-dependent questions, as well as sequencing those text-dependent questions to build to higher analysis. There are also discussion and writing prompts. They're discussion prompts, but they could easily be used for writing as well. And they're great for examples, not the only platform for examples, but a good one if you want to check it out or you want to actually build some things. CommonLit also has some great text sets with lesson plans that go with them. And there's a lot you can create out of the literature from CommonLit. I have placed a new folder in resources in the Schoology Adult Diploma Working Group. And in that folder, I've created the Qualitative Analysis Rubrics and Samples. So in there, I've already placed the qualitative rubric for informational text and for literary text. We only used informational text in the trainings that we did starting out with CCRS because there was such a huge push to using informational text. There is a literary rubric as well. I've also included instructions for going to ATOS or going to Lexile if you haven't, and how to measure texts with the charts so that you can interpret the quantitative measurements. Additionally, I'm going to put in some examples of a qualitative analysis, either a description like a paragraph analysis. I know some programs have, created their own little rubric or something like that, but something that documents that even though the text comes in at a lower quantitative level, there are definite features of complexity that when we have students work with those features of complexity, it is an absolutely appropriate high school diploma assignment. Brad, you want to add anything?
Christine, I really appreciate you pulling this information together, and I also and continuing to add some resources to the Standard Adult Diploma Working Group in Schoology. I think these resources are really helpful. Jill, for example, was in the chat was asking about resources that they could use or that would be accepted, and so this will be a great place to kind of look for some of that work or some of those resources as well. And we encourage others to kind of share resources in the resources folder about what they're doing with the English language arts. I would also just caution people or remind people that, what you're submitting in the portfolio should not be the breadth or all of the student work that they're doing within the with you if you're choosing adult education instruction as the option in reading. It really should be kind of like one bite out of the sundae, or like one of the best bites maybe of the sundae of all of the work that you're doing with that student. So we just want to kind of caution you on that. I really appreciated having this discussion with Christine, because it really kind of helped refine, or she helped kind of pin down our thinking, and really what the ELA and the standards really do tell us and how they should be interpreted. And it kind of helped me check some of my presumptions or assumptions as I was going along as well. So
I think
Christine.
the thing to keep in mind is that you can take a really hard text and ask really low level questions about it. You can take a mid-level text and really push it to a higher place with analysis. And if you're using nonfiction text and you have assignments that you love or that are working for you and you're submitting them for evidence, that's great. Go ahead and you can stay with what you have. This conversation that I had with this program, it was actually Laurie Leach and one of her teachers. These students really love this assignment of reading Thank You, Ma'am, and a Day's Wait, and working with looking at some of the similar themes and breaking down the texts. And we shouldn't disregard literature. It's not, the pendulum is kind of swinging back to the middle a little bit from all nonfiction, though we do want students reading complex text in informational nonfiction. But there are lots of wonderful pieces of literature that just don't quantitatively assess at a high school level, but certainly require higher level thinking to interpret.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more, Christine.
And one more thing, like with Laurie and her teacher, Deb, I'm happy to, if you have questions, like you have an assignment or something and you're not quite sure if it's kicked up a notch that it needs to be, I'm really happy to help with that. It's been really a fun process working with Laurie and her teacher to kind of go through, do the qualitative analysis, really point out the complexity. And I can tell already just from an email I got today that their new writing prompt is in a whole different, it's a whole different ball game. And just some tweaks have pushed it into something different. So I'm happy to help with that. I know Marion has her hand up.
Oh, great. Excellent. Let us call on her. Marion, if you want to unmute yourself, feel free to ask a question. Ask the question.
Okay, thank you. First, I want to thank you and Christine for that very helpful and wonderful explanation. And I want to laugh at the fact that I remember at the very beginning talking about being sad about fiction being left out of this process. So I'm really glad we're swinging back. Go us. And so that was really nice to hear. But my real question is, I am working with a teacher in my school to align some of our classes closely with the diploma and CCRS stuff. And I don't know how sharing on Schoology works in terms of if I want to let him into the diploma group, even though he's not really part of it, to look at some things, or, for instance, send him this PowerPoint, or if Christine is willing to speak to him about some of his resources.
So, good question. And one thing I will just add about the Schoology group, generally we want folks that are to be members of that Schoology group if they really are doing diploma programming with adults. Ideally, they would be part of the standard adult high school diploma program, But I understand if maybe there are some credit completion folks that want to kind of see what's happening within this group, that would make sense for them as well. But I wouldn't want to see just other random people kind of joining the Schoology group. But so that's one thing. And then in terms of sharing resources, all of those resources within the Schoology group, if it's someone that you don't think should be a member of the group, you can always download those resources and then share those with your colleagues or others, as long as it hasn't already been stated that you should not be sharing those items. I don't know if anything had a student's name on it, for example. Ideally, it wouldn't be in the Schoology group anyways, but we want to make sure that we protect certain people's private data as well. And then Christine, do you want to talk about the other aspect of Marion's question?
As far as, I'm sorry, I was focused so much on what you were saying that I forgot the other part.
No, and then the other aspect was if someone in adult education wanted to talk with you just to talk through their ELA work, is that okay?
Absolutely. I mean, that's a growing part of my job at Hamlin, for both or at Atlas for both Lindsay and me, is to do a lot of instructional coaching. And again, I find that teachers have the great ideas. You just kind of have to pull them out, coax them out. But yeah, I'm always willing to look or to give my 2 cents or 10 cents. And before, at our last diploma meeting, I was going to pull together some things so that we can start getting resources up in ELA. And then, of course, things got busy and then this hit. So I'm still hoping to get some great examples of tasks up into that group. But anyone can email me at any time with questions or to have me take a look at something, or if it's something even in process, like this essay is in process for my student. Is the student on the right track to write what will probably be a passing essay? I'm always happy to answer those questions or kick them over or bring in additional people who have some expertise that can give really good advice as well.
Yeah, thank you both. Christine, I also had made a commitment to uploading some materials, and I still intend to do that. So yeah,
I think we all are just doing the best we can right now.
That's right. Exactly. And if I could have just a little bit of clarification from Brad, or in fact, maybe I need to clarify what I was saying. So the idea is that we would like to use one of our ABE classes as basically as a completion option with basically as a completion option. So this teacher I'm talking about would be someone who is teaching a class that I would use as ABE instruction, and maybe even including the E-level resource. So I don't know if that means he's an appropriate person to join the group or not.
But I just want to clarify, Marion, he's teaching ABE students, right? Not K-12 students?
Yeah, ABE students in our building.
Yep. If it's adult education, like I said, this Schoology group is really focused on those doing standard adult diploma work. However, we know that work is very similar to credit completion students or credit completion programming. So I would not have a problem with someone doing credit completion work also joining the Schoology group.
Okay, thank you. Thank you both.
Yeah, thanks for that clarification, Marion. Okay, for the sake of time, I am going to move us on, but don't worry, we will have some time for questions. Let's just give a virtual round of applause to Christine. Thank you for pulling this together and for highlighting this and just really threading the needle so well to help us understand this work about how to handle fiction with standard adult diploma. I really appreciate your insight in this, Christine.
Thanks, Brad, and I appreciate you being open to me banging you over the head sometimes.
Well, we just have a couple minutes left, about 15 minutes left, so I would like us to move on, but don't worry, if you have questions for Christine, you can continue to ask those when you get to the Q&A section. But let's move ahead a little bit. Oh, I think I moved faster than I thought. Oh no, we did have one other final slide that I was going to tackle here. So it's just a reminder that if you're doing ELA reading and putting a portfolio together and the completion option is adult education, make sure you're including that quantitative analysis and if necessary, the qualitative analysis in the case that we were just talking above about use of fiction. Make sure that you're completing or attaching the completed student work that is corrected, that has task instructions, and the teacher evaluation, citing the level E reading standard that's demonstrated with that work, as well as a short explanation from the teacher on how it meets that level. Also, we want to make sure that you're including your overview of all instruction and of the course or that you're providing in terms of instruction. That could be a syllabus, a course description, or some detailed list of units for what you're doing either specifically to ELA or to reading or to ELA generally. Most folks write theirs for ELA generally, not just specifically for reading. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Jody to talk about portfolio evidence cover sheets. Jody.
All right. Yep. Thanks, Brad. So I'll just move through this pretty quickly. This is a little bit of a repeat from other working groups, but I think bears saying a couple more times. Having really good cover sheets in your portfolio is very helpful for reviewers. So we do not require that you don't have to have cover sheets, but helpful cover sheets really do facilitate the review, as long as, if they help us, like a table of contents to see what's in the evidence, if they are accurate, and if they give helpful information. So on the next couple of slides, you'll see we have a couple of examples of cover sheets, and these are both attached in the materials section of the webinar here. And again, these are not required, but these are templates you can use. This one that's up on the slide now is a template to use as a cover sheet when you're using ABE instruction as the completion option. And then on the next slide, we've got an example of a cover sheet that you could use when you're using a high school transcript as the evidence. This one comes from St. Cloud, so shout out to Laurie for this one. So just a note and a recommendation that accurate and organized cover sheets really are helpful for evidence within your portfolio. Is there anything else you wanted to mention, Brad?
No, I think that covered it well. At this point, I would like to address or give some time for program news and highlights for our last couple minutes together, our last 10 to 15 minutes together. And one of the program news or highlights I wanted to specifically call out right away was from Pam Moriarty, who I think is logged in as Sherry Smith. So Pam/Sherry, if you want to unmute yourself.
Hi, Brad.
Hey, Pam. So before I have you share a little bit about your students, I was wondering if you wanted to share a little bit about the question or the comment you posted there. I wasn't quite sure what you meant.
Sure. When we did our last submission for our learner, or in the past when we were doing Learner Web, it was kind of like we did a descriptive letter that kind of introduced the student and gave a little bit of background information about the student. And initially, when we were looking in SID, well, where do we put that? It wasn't until we had entered almost all of the other information about the student that we found the spot of where to put that little cover sheet or that introduction of the student. And it was like, it's at the bottom of the portfolio. And so I don't know if the reviewers or if anybody even sees that until they get all the way through in SID.
So that's a good question, Pam. I will say that from our perspective, the student description, it is true that you don't fill that out till you're ready to submit the student's portfolio. The way it appears for us is a little awkward, but it appears on the left-hand side. So it's actually one of the first things that I see when I look at a student. It's true that it's towards the bottom, and I do have to remind myself that it's there, but that is where it currently is at, and it is visible immediately as you open the portfolio. We could talk with Jenny if it could be moved or if it would be helpful for that to be moved now with this new portfolio option. It's possible that that could be an option, but I'm not entirely sure because it would require some recoding of the database.
Okay, as long as you're seeing it when you first open up the portfolio, that was my concern. It was kind of like, oh, they're not going to see this until at the very end. So
right, understandable.
Okay. All right.
So why don't you tell us about Alicia?
Okay, and well, and Alicia is one of the students that I was just referring to. So Alicia is a student that was referred to our program after attempting to do the GED exams multiple times. She first started back in 2008, and she passed every subset test with flying colors except for the math back in the 2008 era. And then when she came back to the Buffalo or West ABE program to work on her GED again, she passed 2 of the 2014 tests. But the instructor who was working with her noticed that the math concepts were just not sticking with her, and that she was getting not only frustrated, but it'd be like working with her, and then the next day or even a half hour later, it's like the concepts were gone. So she suspected some type of learning disability in the area of math. And so she made a referral to Panda. And but then she also had contacted our program because she knew that we offered a credit recovery diploma. And she was just wondering if that would be a better route for Alicia to go through credit recovery rather than trying to pass the GED math test that may be an impossibility. So that's how we got Alicia. And then in working with her and prior to us getting the evaluation back from Panda, it was very evident that this learning disability with math and the anxiety, everything that was stacked up against it, that we should look at doing credit recovery for math. But then when we got her transcripts back from high school, to do total credit recovery would have been a lot of work. So in thinking about what she had accomplished with her GED testing, we thought the better route would be to do the hybrid of a state diploma using a combination of high school credits that she had already earned because she had speech credits, she had, so the speaking and listening aspects were taken care of. The GED test that she had taken and done an excellent job on took care of some of her social studies and science credits. And then we worked on specifically math for her credit recovery credits. And she finished that up right before COVID-19 hit. So, did I explain it enough?
Yeah, I really appreciate that explanation. And I think, again, that's a wonderful case of why this diploma option exists and just some of the innovative work and how great you were able to kind of maneuver between GED options and credit completion. And you use both of those to help put together a standard adult diploma portfolio. So I just thought that was really outstanding and reflected the need for a third option. So thank you so much, Pam. That
Well,
was really exciting to
yeah,
see.
I appreciate that, Brad. But this is our second adult diploma student, a state diploma student that we were able to do that with. We had another student who completed last summer, maybe, who we did the exact same thing with, and it all related to her math credits. So again, I appreciate the availability of it, and knowing that this option and how we can work all three of them together is to the benefit of individual learners. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing, Pam. Okay, let's open it up for others that would like to share. Looks like Andy Albee, you have your hand up. Feel free to unmute yourself and share.
Yeah, I was just going to refer back to Pam, and we had a student very similar to that in our program who had a brain injury, and like you said, she could do the math one day and the next day it's all gone, but able to get it through on the adult diploma. So that's fantastic that worked out for your student as well. And did want to let you know that student description is absolutely the very first thing that I read when I'm going through a review. So if you're concerned we're not seeing it, I'm telling you right up front, that's the very first thing that I do before I look at anything else. So we are seeing it.
And Paula agrees with you. Yep. I actually, as Pam was describing that, Andy, I was thinking about your student, about the student that from a couple years ago. Yep. And her absolute persistence, which was amazing.
Yeah, we actually created an award at our school that is the persistence award in her name of how much she took on and stuck with us. And she is now working for our school district after getting her adult diploma.
Excellent. Yep. Very exciting. And Paula and Laurie agree with you that they are looking at those student descriptions as well as before they launch into the review. Thanks, Andy. Other folks, anyone else like to share? I think we have Marion, your hand is still up. I don't know if you mean for it to be up or not still, or if you want to share again something, or if you want to share something. Maybe not. Okay. Oh,
No,
no
I'm sorry,
problem.
Brad. No. I'm putting my
No
hand
problem.
down. Thanks.
Excellent. We have a comment in from Amy Fish. She has a student working on a description of the schedule, learning platforms, and teacher communication strategies for her 6 kids, grades K through 9, as her navigating systems evidence. Wow, with her kids, I can see her navigating systems, just the K-12 system, that there should be some great evidence there. Excellent. I appreciate you sharing that, Amy. That's great evidence of navigating systems. Okay.
And then we had some really good discussion, and thank you, very much to Christine and Brad for the stuff on the literacy and the, being able to use fiction, stuff like that. That's great. There's also quite a bit of stuff coming through mathematically that we want to be, paying attention to too. So in the slides, they had the description of making sure you highlight, what is the level E standard. Be really persistent in doing that mathematically as well. You can say in question 5, right here is where they hit that level E standard. It just makes our lives a lot easier when we're going through the portfolio.
Absolutely. I could not agree with you more. Thank you for sharing that, Andy. Well, it is 3 o'clock. I just wanted to make sure that you see in the slides some upcoming events here. May 4th and 5th, yes, next week, Monday and Tuesday from 9:30 to 11:30, we're doing our first ever virtual or webinar version of Standard Adult Diploma 101. And there's a link to register for it right there. Sherry did email those details out a little while back. And you can see our upcoming working group webinar and in-person sessions potentially on the calendar here. Stay tuned. If you have questions, you can always email us or check in with the Schoology group. Thank you all so much. We really appreciate all the creative work you're doing with students right now, and the fact that you're helping them continue their learning, innovating with, to help them learn. I just really appreciate, all of us appreciate your work and persistence. Thank you for your dedication to the students and to this field of adult education. It's truly an amazing field, and I'm so impressed and motivated to have all of you as colleagues. Thank you all so much. Jody, any closing comments from you?
I will just echo that. Thank you. We're so grateful to the new review team and grateful to all of you out there in the field continuing to do this work in very challenging circumstances. Yeah, so thanks so much.